You're watching Republic, and this is our non-stop rolling coverage. Remember, the only story that I think matters in the next many hours, something that India and the entire world is glued onto, is the success, the anticipated success of Chandrayaan 3. India is counting down to that big moment, the historic milestone. On the bottom of your screens, we'll bring up that counter, and that tells you we are just a little over 26 hours away from that big soft landing that's expected on the lunar surface tomorrow. Now, we are also taking this moment to remember the heroes who've actually made this possible today. Who fought the system, who fought our netas, who fought a lot of people who said that India mein khane ke liye paise nahi hai, and India is thinking of a space exploration program. In fact, I'm told that we have our colleague Priyanka joining us, and she has a very special guest with her. Priyanka, it's over to you, and why don't you introduce the guest and tell us why this moment is so very important and so very historic.
Oh, absolutely, Deepthi. And as you pointed out, very important to remember, the people who actually contributed to this level as to now that India is leading into space exploration. And of course, there's a name that we cannot forget. In fact, this is the name that is also reflected in the lander that has been named after this pioneer, which is Vikram Sarabhai, and the lander which has been named Vikram as well. And joining me right now is Karthikeya Sarabhai, his son, and we will be speaking to him about his memories and how he has also seen Vikram Sarabhai as well working. And Vikram Sarabhai, Karthikeya ji, he was the one who founded the PRL here, and if I'm not wrong, it started from a humble residence in a part of Ahmedabad as well. Where were you there then at that time? Could you speak to us a little bit about Vikram Sarabhai's entire journey and how you might have also very closely seen this and witnessed it?
Well, when the retreat, when he started his small lab, he was a kid, so obviously I was not born. And his father encouraged him and his mother encouraged him to do what he thought was so good. And so it was in science, in engineering. He had a little train which went around the campus. That building is still there, a small place under the water tank where the work was started. But from that, he had this passion not only for science, but then he saw how science could be applied. And the first institution, one of the first, was the Physical Research Laboratory, which was started in 47. I was born that year. It was the year of India's independence. So these things happened at the same time. And he also formed some other institutions. And PRL grew. It was a research based at that time. At some stage, he was getting more and more interested in space. And the need that India as a country, developing country, as an emerging country, must be there in space. And he saw space as something which was not just a race, just to be like somebody else, but he saw that space could perform a very intrinsic and very important role in developmental issues of our country. And that's how he was involved in it. I remember, for instance, I was at Cambridge and I was doing physics and mathematics, and that time there was the Bihar drought and everything else. And I said, I want to switch, if you like, and go to development. But he says, Karthikeya, I'm in development. I'm as much in thinking of India's development as I am, and I see science, and especially space, as a way of really helping it and a way of intrinsically working with it. That was a time when he was also thinking of using the satellite for reaching education to places where there was perhaps not even a road, every village in India. And that then later became site experiment. He was talking about point-to-point communication. Today a child knows that we connect to each other through a satellite, but at that time these are very new concepts. Remote sensing and how you could see things. So that was fascinating. I got fascinated also with him, and it was very infectious the way he saw it. But he then, it became a part of atomic energy. It was the commission. He was made a member of the commission. He formed the Indian Committee for Space Research. He was the head of that. Dr. Homi Bhabha was the chair of atomic energy. There was a lot of support for it. And this is how it was growing. The question now came up of finding a right place to do these experiments. And they were doing it, they wanted it something on the magnetic equator. The magnetic equator happens to go through Kerala, southern Kerala. And after search, they found this almost perfect spot. But the point was there was a church there. And how do you do it? So I think the story is, and Dr. Abdul Kalam often liked to repeat the story, that he went there and he talked to the bishop there that, it's an unusual request that can we hand over the church for space exploration. So the bishop said, come tomorrow, which was a Sunday, and talk to my parish. So he went there, he talks to them, and he says, can you all give it? And they all raise their hand and say, amen.
Beautiful, that's a beautiful story.
And the fact is that in India, you don't have to do things by acquiring and taking only. If you just share with people what the dream is, and for India and for India's dream, people are willing to give up even something like this. And so that's where that first initial rocket experiments were there. I remember being there with him in one of those experiments on the beach. And these were rockets which are fantastic, but they're small rockets. And the very classic photograph of some of the early rockets being taken to the site on a bicycle remind us of where we have come from there. But I think what he did was, for the space organization, then ISRO was formed, was to establish the DNA of that organization. How should we work? How do we encourage young minds?
And that's also something that I want to speak to you about, because as you very rightly pointed out, it is not just the space exploration, but also how that helps in the development of a nation as well, and how that contributes to a societal development as well. And keeping that in mind, these organizations had also been set up. ISRO had been set up. So what was the trajectory as well that he had been taking, and how it had been established when you are talking about these experiments as well that you had been being. Yeah.
So the initial experiments, and what he saw was that initially we were not in a race with the US or Russia. They had their own agenda. We had our own agenda, and we wanted to develop our space program in our own way. And that you can see it even today, that the way ISRO is taking the satellite and the lander to the moon is totally different from what some of the other countries did. We are doing it in a very cost-effective way. We are using these orbits, and then they get caught, and it's going around in the orbit now. So this thing of having the confidence of looking at the best and then picking the right thing for us is very much part of ISRO and the way thinking is. But his vision was for the nation. And I spoke about education through satellite, but you spoke about how he had been fortunate to have a lab for his own. So he said, why shouldn't any child have a lab? And so the Community Science Center was established in Ahmedabad. And he used to often say that when I retire, I want to teach young minds to do things.
And that's also the reason, the point is that, these developing nations as well, and these statements that used to be made about how India doesn't have its priorities right if it is going towards space exploration, that there are people who need to be fed first. But that's what my point was, that this space exploration was also the way that you were telling, that his perspective on this and his vision on this was towards the development of the country, and importantly that it had been set up in 1947.
No, it was extremely important to have this view of space as something which was a tool. And there are innumerable statements of his on how the scientific temperament is required in all things which we do. Why does it become so important in a nation like India? I mean, India experienced the COVID thing, and everyone saw how science had to catch up so fast to develop a new vaccine to stay ahead of the curve. But that is true of all fields. And I think something like this, there was the right time for things. So I think the right time for India to feel proud that we can go to the moon has come now. It is now. He would not have put it in the 60s, because at that time our priorities were slowly emerging. It is even emerging now. And it's wonderful that India can have this thing. He also saw the fact that for such large organizations, you need also good management. And so he was involved in things like setting up of the Indian Institute of Management at Ahmedabad. He saw research intrinsically, so the ATIRA was set up also as the Ahmedabad Textile Industrial Research Area. But in space, that was his real love. It was his love and his passion, and in many ways, we miss him today. We would like to share that joy with him. And also and people have written when there's a failure, which there often is, how graciously he would take it. I mean, our Prime Minister has done a wonderful, in the first one. I don't think anyone in India forgets those images of consoling the chairman, because it was otherwise a highly successful mission. Chandrayaan was highly successful. It's just that last thing didn't happen, and we hope tomorrow everything goes well. But we must understand that science is science, and I mean, just think of where we are doing, what we are doing things.
And so much so that the International Astronomical Union, in fact, had also named the Bessel A and the Sea of Serenity after him as well. And now we have the rover named after Vikram Sarabhai as well. And it is probably going to be making the landing tomorrow itself. And of course, everybody, not just Indians, across the world, we are all waiting with bated breath as to what's going to happen. And apart from not just landing, but exploration of the South Polar region where nobody has gone, no other country has explored, India is the first one. And it is possible because of the trajectory that had been set in motion by Vikram Sarabhai in 1947.
But that was the whole point, that we are not just imitating someone. And this is true of so much of what he says. We have to make our own path.
Whoever says India wasn't leading in innovation can eat their words.
Yeah, we have to look at our priorities. We can look at what other people are doing, but we don't want to be, just because someone's doing something or something's going fast, let's just imitate that. And that is true in our energy policies, it is true about our agriculture, it is true of our industry, it's true of our education, it's true of everything. And this is what he stressed, that India needs to be, after all, we are 1/6 of mankind, the largest nation, and a democracy, and we need to understand that with a 5,000-year-old culture. So we need to have that pride. And I think something like this happening tomorrow does lift the hearts of everyone. Every Indian, I think, feels proud of what's going to happen. And we hope everything goes well. But it's already gone so well. I mean, we've already achieved so much till yesterday or till today. The photographs we are seeing now.
Absolutely. And interestingly, that has been also developed in Ahmedabad, ISRO, the cameras that have been developed, the heart and the eyes of, so to speak, of Chandrayaan 3, that we are sitting right now in Gujarat, and that's where it had been.
And it's a very collaborative work. If you see that thing which goes there, there'll be little parts of it we have made in different parts of India and different places, because it is something you see India coming together to do something like this, and that camaraderie, that feeling that we are on a mission, we are in mission, which is what is required. So all the way from getting that church to getting a lander in the moon, I think the whole philosophy of ISRO has been one of inclusivity, of excellence, of professionalism. A woman scientist leading the mission. I mean, just imagine all these things. So it's cross your fingers and just.
No, absolutely. We share the feelings right now. Even as we are sitting in your residence, we can feel that we're just waiting till tomorrow morning. I believe my colleague Deepthi also has a question for you, and we could quickly get that across as well, Deepthi.
Oh yes, not a question, Priyanka, because I think this is all about memories. And Karthike very brilliantly, I think, has brought out some very, very strong images of Vikram Sarabhai, the man, how he used to think, how he used to operate, his affiliation for children. He always wanted everyone to be a part of science, because he said science has the answers to almost all questions in this world. Just behind you, Priyanka, I noticed some brilliant portraits also of Vikram Sarabhai there. Why don't you take Karthike, down that memory lane? Tell us more about Vikram Sarabhai, the man, when he was not a scientist, when he was not in his lab. What was he as a person? And, what is Karthike thinking right now? We are just a little over 25 hours away from that Chandrayaan 3. What are his thoughts right now? What is he feeling?
Oh, absolutely. Sir, we were also looking at the books of Vikram Sarabhai ji, and, basically wanted to also speak to you about him beyond him being a scientist, beyond him being an innovator as well, because you've seen perhaps the most candid side of him, and perhaps, how you said that you've also developed your interest towards what he was, exploring towards. So how did that interest also develop? Did he kind of, bring this knickknacks of information back to you about these explorations as well? Who was he in the house?
Well, he was always curious and excited about things happening, not only in his field. I don't remember, the lunchtime conversation or dinner time conversation were absolutely fascinating. And as a result of him being there, there would be a guest or something who would come. And again, they're all at the frontiers of whatever they were doing. It could be M.S. Swaminathan in agriculture, or Dr. Kurian doing something in Amul. It could be an international scientist, or it could be someone in the arts. He's supported by mother and very much in the dancing and in performance. So we were always exposed to something which was so exciting and doing it. He would look very simple. He was someone who was very much down to earth and therefore could speak to anyone. There are so many stories. Get new stories every day. When I'm somewhere, someone says, "Okay, do you know there was a cart stuck as he was coming into PRL?" So he gets down from the cart and with that man pushes it back into it. Now this was a story I just heard 2 days ago from someone who remembers that story. So it was that type of thing, that he never lost his humbleness and humanity.
His eyes were in the space, but his feet were on the ground.
Yeah, or he saw space as space and the ground as the same. He had this, there was a sort of nationalism, very strong nationalistic thing, but which was not exclusive. It was global. So he was looking at global peace very much. He was very much part of looking at how space and atomic energy, how it can help globally. At the same time, you're proud of your country and you want that ahead. So how do you see that in this? He also did wonderful work which is not known so much in pharmaceuticals. He did work in operation research, in seeing that scientific methods come into management. He's done a lot. Education, of course, and as his thing, I would often he said he would sit with me and do some work. And I thought, okay, he will help me, but he doesn't. He literally just sits with me. And if I ask him a question, he asks me a question back till I solve it myself. But it was very much
using the Socrates method with you.
Very much a Socrates method. Very much as a result of the family exposed to Gandhian values and ideas. And that was very much part of his upbringing.
Absolutely, because I think the family has been very intrinsically involved with the independence fight as well, with the Vikram Sarabhai ji, or also your grandfather for that matter as well. And so I think this sense of, nationalism, as you said, in whatever sense of it, has always been very ingrained in...
It is very ingrained in him. It's come down to us. You sort of want to fly your flag wherever you are. But one sees the potential. I think what was magnificent was the way he saw potential. And I think he spotted individuals wonderfully. And that was one of those traits of being able to see and see how that individual should do what that person is best at. So it was never a question of fitting people or fitting projects into it. Again, Abdul Kalam writes that he was working on the stage 3 of a rocket, while the stage 1 and 2 are not even developed. Now, normally someone will say, you first start with this. But Vikram's answer to him was that, no, you are best at that, that's your passion, you do that. Even if the other 2 stages are not ready, we'll fly it from France if necessary. But you should do what you are doing best. And that whole attitude, which is responsible for this. And so, in a sense, I am, of course, his family. But there's so many people who feel that sense of family. ISRO itself feels like a family. When you go there. So
absolutely. So, I want to speak to you as his son as well. The entire country, very quickly, the last question before I let you go. The entire country, and not just the entire country, the entire world, because as I pointed out, the South Polar region where no other country has explored, we are going to get some insight into what is there and more data about it. How are you as his son also feeling right now in these few hours when we are just expecting the landing to take place tomorrow? And he was essentially the one who conceptualized this entire thing. And he was the one, as I pointed out earlier as well, that he was the one who set this entire trajectory in motion. So today, in the next few hours, what are you going through? What are you feeling? How are you remembering him as well?
Yeah, I think I probably having goosebumps as much as other people having it. You know,
I can feel that energy.
you can feel that it's there. So it's something which I share with so many other people in India and so many people elsewhere, that we have it. It's a proud moment because we are the first of humanity. Why do we say India? We'll be the first people on behalf of the entire people of the planet to land on that south thing. It's probably the place where India was one of the first to say that there was water potential there. There are minerals there. Tomorrow, how that will affect mankind, we don't know. Today we need to do research on climate change, we need to do research on all of these things. These are all linked issues.
So Karthik Sarabhai, much like his dad, Dr. Vikram Sarabhai, also wears multiple hats. He was in conversation with our colleague Priyanka, and he's telling us that he's having goosebumps, I think much like all of us. The moment you see these pictures that ISRO has been releasing, and we are also in fact learning that the real pictures of descent will also come in very, very soon. That happens later this evening, and we'll just use this opportunity to not just thank him, but also head into a quick break. On the other side, back with our non-stop rolling coverage.